Chapter 1. The Birth of the Windsors, Forged by Tempest and Time. In the storm-laden year of 1917, as thunder echoed over Europe and gunfire shook the ground, the British monarchy faced a crisis unlike any before. The story of the Windsors begins with uncertainty, rumor, and the frantic search for identity in a hostile era. It is a tale of transformation, sacrifice, and survival, a dynasty reborn in the darkness of war. For centuries, the British crown belonged to foreign houses. The Hanoverians ruled from palaces in Germany and Britain, their bloodline entwined with the fate of Europe. Their names, Hanover, Saxe-Coburg, and Gotha, carried the weight of ancient alliances and the complexities of international politics. Their portraits hung alongside those of Habsburgs and Romanovs, their children married into courts across the continent. Yet time marched on, and the world changed. By the early 20th century, the old system of crowns and treaties was crumbling. A great war erupted, and suddenly the royal house's German origins became a mark of suspicion in England. Soldiers fought on muddy fields, families mourned lost sons, and within the palaces, anxiety grew. Could the monarchy, a symbol meant to unite the people, survive such scrutiny from within? At the heart of this storm stood King George V. Solid, upright, rarely given to improvisation, he nonetheless recognized danger when it came. Newspapers published attacks on his German ancestry. The public demanded reassurance, and even those closest to him whispered advice and warnings. The king knew that the time for subtlety had passed. Only dramatic change could restore faith and rescue the monarchy's image. Thus, in the summer of 1917, George V called together his closest advisors, seeking a path through the tempest. The answer came not in diplomacy, but in reinvention. With a single declaration, the king abandoned the title Saxe-Coburg and Gotha and bestowed upon his family a fresh identity: the House of Windsor. It was more than a cosmetic transformation. It was a calculated gamble, a break from the turbulent past, and a step toward unity. The impact rippled through British society and beyond. Windsor was a name that belonged to the land, a stone fortress on the Thames, a symbol of English history and pride. The public received the change with relief, even excitement. Newspapers changed their tone overnight, no longer questioning the family's loyalty. The palace held ceremonies celebrating the new dynasty, and the king, dressed in military uniform, visited hospitals and comforted those wounded by war. But the transformation was also painful. German relatives disappeared from family trees. Old friends became strangers. Within the palace, letters arrived and departed in silence. Some relationships ended in heartbreak. Children were taught new customs, servants whispered rumors, and the castle itself seemed to take a breath of fresh air as the royal household embraced its new role. George V and his close family led by example, adopting more modest lifestyles, rejecting excess and cultivating an image of humble service. The monarchy learned to navigate public appearances with grace and dignity, crafting a sense of solidarity with the British people. Outside the palace, the effects were equally profound. The nation watched as the monarchy evolved, growing less distant and more approachable. Ceremonies became grand yet inclusive, no longer only reserved for the noble elite. Soldiers and civilians alike looked to Windsor Castle as a source of inspiration, a testament to survival against odds. It is easy to think the story ends here, with unity and celebration. Yet beneath the surface, uncertainty lingered. The ties to Europe's aristocracy were not fully severed, and the wounds of war left scars on every royal portrait. The Windsors remained vigilant, knowing that survival required ongoing adaptation. The dynasty's new name was only the beginning. The real test would be living up to its myth. As peace returned, the House of Windsor found itself stronger, yet altered forever. Its journey from foreign bloodlines to national legend was complete, but the shadows of history remained. In every speech and every parade, the family carried reminders of their transformation. They would face future scandals, new wars, and relentless public scrutiny, drawing strength from their origins and their courage to change. Thus began the saga of the Windsors, a family shaped by crisis, united by adversity, and destined to leave a mark on the world. Their first chapter is not just a story of war, but of rebirth in the fire of history, where the old ways melted into new legends and a nation found hope in a name. Chapter 2: Power, Crisis, and Reinvention. The roaring decades of the 20th century were never kind to those who ruled. For the Windsors, the crown was not a shield, it was a crucible, testing their mettle at every turn. After the name Windsor was born out of necessity during WWI, the dynasty quickly realized that survival depended not just on English stone and ceremony, but on the ability to adapt to a world that changed faster than any royal ritual. The story truly begins with the passing of King George V, whose stoic leadership had rebuilt trust after the storm of war. There was hope, confidence that the monarchy, newly English, could command respect and loyalty again. But fate soon handed the scepter to Edward VIII, whose reign would last only months but leave a scar on the royal psyche that never fully healed. Edward was every inch the modern king, dashing, charming, restless. His tastes ran toward the glamorous and the controversial. In dim-lit drawing rooms and bustling city soirees, his romance with Wallis Simpson turned from whispers to headlines, from scandal to national crisis. A twice-divorced American, Wallis was everything that tradition forbade. But for Edward, she was irresistible. The government balked, the church shuddered, and even his mother's eyes darkened with the worry. It was more than a personal matter. The king's choices threatened the legitimacy of the institution. At last, faced with the impossible, Edward VIII stood before his country and made history. He abdicated the throne, saying, "I cannot carry out my duties without the help and support of the woman I love." With those words, the crisis became a turning point. The monarchy, for the first time in centuries, was reshaped by love and by loss. The world was stunned. Edward's brother, Albert, suddenly became King George VI. He was shy, prone to stammering, and plagued by self-doubt. But Britain had little time for sentiment. War was on the wind, and the monarchy's fate would be decided not by royal decree, but by shared suffering. World War II was a test unlike any before. London was battered by air raids. Bombs rattled the palace windows. The air was tense with fear, and hope mingled together. Yet the royal family refused to flee. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth visited bombed neighborhoods, comforted survivors, and stayed in London as a symbol of unity. Their resilience was genuine, and it bound the monarchy to the spirit of a nation fighting for survival. After victory, however, the monarchy could not rest. The world was different. Empire crumbled, new voices rose, and the press, which once bowed before the throne, now sharpened its pen with gossip and scandal. A new queen ascended, Elizabeth II, young, intelligent, full of resolve. Her reign would be a marathon, not a sprint. Each year she faced fresh challenges: the independence movements, sweeping away colonies, the scrutiny of modern media, and the persistent rumblings of scandals behind palace walls. Divorce and intrigue, public squabbles and private pain, each new chapter reminded the Windsors that public adoration could evaporate overnight. Yet they endured. The Windsors weathered the rush of celebrity, the pop culture revolutions, and the constant negotiation with parliament and prime ministers. Royal marriages became both symbols of continuity and battlegrounds of controversy. The family's private moments, failures, triumphs, heartbreaks, played out before millions, making them both mythic and recognizably human. Throughout the century, the dynasty's ability to adapt took center stage. They learned to change with the times, yet struggled with tradition's grip. Behind closed doors, stern arguments and loving reconciliations shaped their course. Each monarch, from George VI's reluctant leadership to Elizabeth II's determined constancy, left a unique imprint on British history. As the years rolled on, their story became less about crowns and more about survival. The monarchy faced moments of near collapse, but each time it marshaled its rituals and reinvented its image, sometimes painfully, sometimes triumphantly. The fate of the Windsors became inseparable from the fate of Britain itself, reflecting every storm, every dawn, every doubt and faith of the nation. In the end, the chapter closes with a family battered but unbroken, a dynasty still learning to claim relevance against the forces of change. Power, crisis, and reinvention remain their heritage. The Windsors, for all their privileges and mistakes, stand as witnesses to a century of transformation, resilient, flawed, and forever intertwined with the tumult of British life. Chapter 3: Scandals, Shadows, and the Tabloid Age. When the velvet curtains of history are pulled back, the Windsor family saga is revealed to be as dramatic and complicated as any Shakespearean tragedy. Yes, the monarchy is built upon centuries of tradition and rituals polished by time. But in the 20th century, something changed. Behind the marble walls and glittering ceremonies, the private missteps of Windsor lives became public, and scandal stepped into the spotlight. The shadow of scandal first swept across the dynasty with the abdication of Edward VIII, a seismic event that left the monarchy forever changed. While Edward's story is well known, the years that followed brought new drama, heightened by changing social mores and the relentless gaze of the media. It was Princess Margaret who brought a heady mix of romance and rebellion to royal life. In the aftermath of World War II, Britain wanted fairy tales, stories to comfort a nation rebuilding from ruins. Margaret, glamorous and impulsive, seemed to promise one. Her love affair with Peter Townsend, a dashing war hero but a divorced man, ignited a national debate. Could a royal defy the rules for happiness? Letters whispered of heartbreak, and when Margaret finally gave up Townsend under duress, it left a wound that echoed in tabloids and novels for years. But the monarchy's most public trials were yet to come. Queen Elizabeth II led the family into the modern world, a world where press scrutiny intensified and personal privacy became a luxury few royals could afford. The Queen watched as her children became the center of storms that would shake the foundations of royal tradition. Prince Charles's marriage to Diana Spencer began with jubilation. Princess Diana quickly became an icon of her time, adored for her elegance, compassion, and groundbreaking approach to charity and motherhood. Yet, unreachable pressures and unmet expectations soon strained the union. Princess Diana's struggles became front-page news, her loneliness, her battle with bulimia, and suspicions about Prince Charles's loyalty. Both Charles and Diana found comfort outside their marriage, and as rumors swirled, the press turned private heartbreak into national drama. Diana's interviews broke centuries of royal silence. She spoke candidly about her pain, her relationship with Charles, and her life within the palace walls. British society watched in fascination as the fairy tale unraveled. Divorce was rare in royal circles, but by the mid-1990s it could no longer be avoided. Diana ceased to be a princess, but she never stopped being the people's princess. Tragedy struck in 1997 when Diana died in a Paris car crash, chased by paparazzi. The outpouring of grief was global. Mourners filled the streets of London, and at first the Windsors seemed cold, distant, a monarchy out of touch. Only through public mourning and appearances did the family find a way back to the nation's heart. The subsequent years brought more secrets to light. Prince Andrew's personal connections and alleged improprieties pushed the Windsors into tabloids for deeply uncomfortable reasons, bringing renewed scrutiny to the monarchy's privilege and accountability. Royal marriages continued to fracture. Princess Anne's divorce from Captain Mark Phillips, Prince Andrew's separation from Sarah Ferguson, and Prince Edward's struggles with media expectations each added new layers to the family's public saga. By the turn of the millennium, scandal was less about romance and more about trust. How should Windsor children behave? What did loyalty, privacy, and tradition mean when the whole world watched every move on television and social media? The monarchy, built for ceremony and mystery, found itself forced to modernize rapidly, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes successfully. Yet in the midst of scandal, there was transformation. The public saw royals not as distant icons, but flawed individuals grappling with love, loss, and family drama. Charity work, especially by Diana, but also by others, became a vital tool for rebuilding reputation. The lessons were hard. Every crisis became an opportunity to adapt and reassess. Advisors debated, royals learned to manage interviews, and the Queen herself sometimes broke formality to connect with the people. The age of the untouchable monarch was gone, replaced by a Windsor brand forged equally in resilience and raw humanity. So ends the third chapter. The Windsors, for all their privilege, had learned that the spotlight is as dangerous as any battlefield. Their scandals, painful, public, and persistent, became the scaffolding for new traditions, new mythologies, and a renewed relationship with Britain itself. The drama, far from diminishing them, confirmed their place in the echo chamber of modern history. Battered, fascinating, still standing. Chapter 4. Portraits of Influence, Power, and Personality. Every dynasty is built by individuals whose strengths, wounds, and quirks shape not just their family, but the very destiny of a nation. The Windsor story is not only the history of a royal house, it is the tapestry woven from its most dazzling, tortured, and tireless personalities. The saga of the Windsors begins with King George V, a man schooled in the old virtues: duty, sacrifice, and order. Though at first glance austere, George V was the quiet architect of the House of Windsor itself. He understood, with the clarity born of crisis, that only by becoming more British, more ordinary even, could the monarchy survive the storms of modernization and war. Under his sober leadership, the public saw a royal family less removed from their daily lives, more concerned with service than spectacle. He was not flashy, but his discipline and sense of sacrifice would set the tone for all who came after. The contrast to his son, Edward VIII, could hardly have been starker. Edward was charismatic, impulsive, and loved the glitter of society. He longed for a life not defined by rules, yearning for freedom even at the cost of his crown. History judges him as both romantic and reckless, the king who surrendered everything for love, casting a shadow of both scandal and legend that would haunt the family for decades. Stepping reluctantly into the void left by Edward, George VI was the unlikeliest of heroes. Plagued by a stammer and painfully shy, he represented the ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Yet his courage shone brightest when tested by adversity. During World War II's darkest nights, George VI and his Queen Elizabeth stood firm in London, their presence inspiring citizens under siege. His struggle and his compassion earned the family both love and loyalty, transforming the monarchy into a symbol of national survival. But perhaps the Windsor's most enduring figure is Queen Elizabeth II. Growing up amid the turbulence of global war, she matured quickly into a symbol of stability and continuity. Her reign, one of the longest in British history, became a study in adaptation. Elizabeth balanced centuries-old ceremony with the demands of the modern era, televised speeches, royal tours, diplomatic negotiations, and relentless public scrutiny. She cultivated an air of calm and dedication, never allowing personal emotion to threaten her image of duty. Though quiet in temperament, she wielded immense influence, her approval or disapproval able to nudge governments and shape public feeling. Under her, the monarchy not only survived crisis after crisis, it learned how to harness both tradition and change. The royal circle widened, and new personalities captured national fascination. Prince Philip, the Queen's consort, was both her fiercest defender and her most candid critic. His bluntness, humor, and restless energy helped propel the royal family into the modern era, though sometimes at the cost of public controversy. Philip pushed his children, especially his son, Prince Charles, to adapt, often clashing with the younger generation, increasingly at odds with royal protocol. Charles, the eternal heir apparent, grew up in the shadow of legendary parents. Sensitive, idealistic, and often misunderstood, he struggled to find his own voice while bearing the full weight of expectation and public scrutiny. His marriage to Diana Spencer, eagerly watched by millions, would end in heartbreak, but also redefine what the monarchy meant to the people. Diana, radiant and compassionate, brought new warmth and humanity to the role of princess. Her impact was so profound that even after her tragic death, she remained an icon of empathy and modern royal life. Nor could the world ignore Princess Margaret, the Queen's younger sister, a woman as passionate and rebellious as she was glamorous. Her longing for love and her willingness to break royal norms made her both a cautionary tale and a symbol of change. Margaret's struggles with duty, heartbreak, and self-expression reflected the growing tension between tradition and the freedoms of the modern age. Successive Windsors brought fresh perspectives, talents, and controversies. Princess Anne carved her place as one of the family's hardest workers. Prince Andrew's actions would spark global headlines. Prince Edward's search for identity led him toward media and the arts. Each has added a thread, sometimes golden, sometimes dark, to the Windsor tapestry. In the end, the story of the Windsors is the story of personalities in perpetual negotiation, honor and ambition, loyalty and independence, sacrifice and self. Their triumphs inspire pride, their scandals provoke debate, and their resilience in the face of public pressure ensures that the legend of the Windsors endures. As history moves forward, each new generation answers the same question. What does it mean to be royal in a changing world? The answer always is found in the lives, choices, and very human hearts of those who bear the Windsor name. Chapter 5. Reinvention on the global stage. Twilight falls over Buckingham Palace, and the skyline of London glitters not just with royal grandeur, but the blue glow of screens tuned to drama, both real and mythic. The Windsors, ancient and eternal, learn to navigate this new terrain. The digital age does not ask politely. It demands honesty, speed, and a willingness to be seen. Queen Elizabeth II, ever the embodiment of quiet strength, now faces the world not only in processions and ceremonies, but in viral moments, unscripted interviews, and families fragmenting before the public's gaze. The age of deference is over. The Queen stands for hours at charity events, shakes hands with schoolchildren, receives heads of state, and listens quietly to the rhythms of her changing nation. Her reputation for calm is legendary, yet beneath the pearls and hats, there is resolve and subtle adaptation. Her Christmas broadcast is not the formal recitation her father once gave. She speaks of family, of national challenges, and in recent years of loss and hope. Her grandchildren play on palace lawns in full view of the cameras, their lives both magical and mundane. The Queen, with infinite poise, lets a little more light into the world's most famous home. Her way of conceding that privacy is both precious and fleeting. For Prince Charles, the new era brings both redemption and challenge. Once seen as stiff and uncomfortable, he now uses his influence to champion climate initiatives, urban renewal, and traditional arts. He sits in radio studios, gives interviews in sustainable gardens, and allows a little self-deprecating humor. His marriage with Camilla Parker Bowles is less a spectacle than a quiet assertion of enduring love, learned too late for fairy tales. The younger Windsors are more daring. William and Kate's courtship was the stuff of dreams, but its resonance came from normalcy. The university romance, the awkward introductions, the modern family photos. Their children are raised amidst tradition, but not suffocated by it. Kate borrows fashion from high street stalls and posts her own pictures. William, haunted by Diana's legacy, turns his mother's pain into advocacy, speaking up front about trauma, loss, and the hope of healing. Then there is Harry, bold, wounded, fiercely independent. He and Meghan Markle broke centuries of silence to speak openly about exclusion, depression, and racism. Their departure from royal life burned through headlines for months. They do podcasts, TV specials, and public speaking, demanding, as Diana once did, to be seen as more than figures behind the glass. But the digital age is not always a friend. Prince Andrew becomes a symbol of scandal and retreat, stripped of duties under the harsh gaze of global media. The Windsors learn to apologize, to step back, and to engage in what they never imagined: public accountability. Behind closed doors, the debates are fierce. Should the monarchy denounce social media? Should it modernize ceremonies further? Advisors, family, and the Queen herself weigh risks and rewards late at night, knowing every choice will be analyzed by millions. The clash of generations is not polite. The older Windsor tradition collides with the demands of grandchildren, desperate for authenticity. Yet as the centuries turn, the magic remains. Windsor weddings are global festivals, parades draw crowds, and the nation stops to watch the Queen's Jubilee, to celebrate resilience and tradition. The pain and turmoil, the awkwardness, the loss, the scandals, are all woven into the tapestry of a dynasty refusing to fade. As storms pass and headlines cool, the Windsors stand on a threshold. Every whisper from the palace now competes with the roar of the world. Yet the family finds new strength. They share, they stumble, and they rise again, proving that survival is a process, not a state, but a dance between past and future. The story of the Windsors in the digital age is not just one of reinvention, but of redemption, a tale of vulnerability, innovation, and the courage to remain both legendary and human. Chapter 6: Legacy, Future, and the Weight of History. As the sun sets behind Windsor Castle, its silhouette etched against a restless sky, the legacy of the Windsors unfolds as both echo and prophecy. The dynasty once rebranded itself out of crisis, casting off German roots to become a living symbol of British resilience. Yet as history turned, their role grew richer and more complicated. The Windsors didn't simply survive the storms of the 20th century. They became its chroniclers, its participants, its cautionary tale, and its inspiration. Throughout decades, the Windsor myth grew and withered, transformed anew in public memory. The family's presence marked every chapter of British history, from the jubilation that greeted victory in war to the tears spilled during national tragedy. Queens and kings did not simply preside, they soothed, united, and at times divided the nation. In every speech, every parade, every public gesture, the monarchy asked not just to be remembered, but to anchor the turbulent spirit of the country itself. Cultural identity for millions found definition in the figure of Queen Elizabeth II. Steady through eras of boom and bust, her Christmas broadcasts became ritual, tradition, and comfort. Her visits to villages and city schools, her handshakes with both world leaders and the common citizen, sketched a portrait of dignity evolving with each decade. Britain changed, immigration, revolution in music and fashion, social upheaval, but the crown remained a constant, its weight felt in ways both symbolic and concrete. Yet even in moments of national unity, division splintered beneath the surface. Not all looked fondly on the Windsors. Criticism of monarchy, cost, and privilege swelled in newspapers and public squares. Debates flared. Should the monarchy modernize further, even abolish itself, or continue as a symbol of continuity? Some called for a republic, citing outdated laws and hierarchies. Others, passionate and nostalgic, argued that monarchs were not mere figureheads, but crucial bearers of shared history and hope. Generational change brought new winds. William and Kate, educated, relatable, cautious in public appearance, offered comfort with their blend of tradition and transparency. Their willingness to discuss family, mental health, the pressures of public life transformed the monarchy's voice. Harry and Meghan, however controversial, forced conversations about race, mental wellness, and the power of independence. Public division became increasingly visible. Polls fluctuated, revealing support in times of royal weddings and scrutiny during scandals. Media commentary, from national broadcasters to social platforms, measured every gesture, every mishap, every apology. Each new story wasn't just news, it was an argument for or against the monarchy's future. Still, the Windsors influenced more than headlines. Their charities, tours, and participation in Commonwealth initiatives shaped global goodwill. British royal ceremonies attracted millions. Markets, artists, designers, and fans around the world. Royal births were celebrated on 6 continents. When anniversaries and funerals occurred, Britain seemed to pause, all eyes on the rituals of succession and remembrance, even as critics reminded the world that progress is never automatic. Internally, the Windsor family was never free from trial. Scandals, divorces, personal anguish, all made public and painful by powerful media. But through each crisis, the question persisted. Could the Windsors survive another century as more than relics? If so, by what means? Through reinvention, public service, or the quiet dignity of enduring presence? Looking forward, Britain's identity will, in part, be shaped by the answer. Some envision a renewed monarchy, one willing to cut ties with colonial past, embrace multiculturalism, and give genuine voice to the young. Others see a slow twilight, where relevance must finally concede to democracy and change. Yet history reminds us, the story of the Windsors is not only about crowns, jewels, or parades. It is about a family who came to embody continuity, hope, and the paradox of leadership through crises no elected leader could have weathered unaided. Their legacy is complex, sometimes inspiring, sometimes controversial, always evolving. As another day closes over Windsor Castle, the family stands at the edge of era. The people's memories, the nation's hopes, and the weight of centuries crowd quietly at their window. The chronicle continues, not in endings, but in questions. What it means to lead, to adapt, and to remain as both myth and mirror to the people you serve. Conclusion. The story of the Windsors is far more than the chronicle of a family or the sequence of reigns measured in years and ceremonies. From crisis-born beginnings through decades of reinvention, heartbreak, and resilience, their saga unfolds as a mirror to Britain itself, a nation forever wrestling with its memory and its future. We have walked through wars and weddings, scandals and succession. We have watched kings give up crowns for love, queens stand stolidly in the face of bombs and revolution, and new generations find their voice in the glare of relentless publicity. Each chapter in Windsor history has shaped them, and us, with lessons about the cost of continuity and the courage demanded by change. Their legacy endures because the Windsors never belonged only to palaces or pageants. They became symbols, sometimes inspiring, sometimes flawed, of the values and contradictions at the heart of modern life. Dignity and vulnerability, unity and controversy, tradition and reform. All these live within the walls of Windsor Castle and the headlines that mark their journey. Across the ages, the Windsors have taught us that real endurance requires honesty and adaptation. Their greatest triumphs have come in moments of openness, when the family allowed itself to be human, to share grief, joy, and the challenges of leadership. Their darkest hours, scandal, division, and doubt have deepened the lesson that legacy is built as much on how one responds to crisis as on inherited privilege. Today, amid uncertain times and shifting values, the Windsors stand as witnesses and participants in a larger story. Their fate is intertwined with the questions Britain, and much of the world, asks about identity, tradition, fairness, and hope. Will monarchy remain a source of unity or become a relic of a vanished age? Can the lessons of transparency, service, and resilience guide not just the House of Windsor, but all of us facing change? In the closing pages of this saga, the Windsor dynasty remains unfinished, unresolved, a living drama shaped by every new era, every new generation. They leave us with echoes of history and the challenge to create meaning, continuity, and compassion, no matter what title we bear. The true strength of the Windsors is their willingness to walk the line between legend and life, showing that greatness is never simple, and that survival may be the richest legacy of all. As night falls over Windsor Castle, the future waits, unwritten, full of possibility, and watched by eyes both critical and hopeful. The Windsor saga continues, each new day another chance to shape history, heal wounds, and find purpose in the unending task of becoming not just royals, but examples for the world.